Welcome to Ordinary Teachers and Students, where we get to hear teachers and students tell us their extraordinary stories. My hope is that through this podcast, ordinary teachers from around the world can relate to the stories they hear and get some timely suggestions and ideas. My name is Alan Cheng, and I'm a secondary school teacher in the UK, a life coach, and a former university lecturer. My mission is to make the education system a better place for all. Today, I'm delighted to invite Anna Kurtovic onto our podcast. Anna is a certified life coach and fellow alumni from the Jay Shetty Certification School. In addition to life coaching, Anna has been a teacher for over a decade. She advocates for systems that give students more freedom and flexibility to choose their curriculum and learn at their own pace. She currently works with families who homeschool through the California Charter School Network. Whether teaching or life coaching, Anna is passionate about helping others learn how to break free from limiting beliefs and begin to live with authenticity, joy, and purpose. Let's welcome Anna. Did I get your surname right?
You did, yeah. Thank you, Alan.
Just
I love
about,
that
hopefully.
introduction. Yeah.
Anything else to add to the intro?
No, that was such a great intro. I don't think so. I think that really sums up who I am and what I'm doing right now and how I'm kind of merging those two purposes.
Sure. Shall we go straight into what got you started in the first place? Like, what made you want to teach in the first place?
Yeah, we can. Complete transparency. It was a practical choice for me.
Yep.
I was a young parent. I had my my firstborn when I was 20.
Yep.
And I just thought I need to do something that would allow me to be with him as much as possible. You know, I need to work, but I also want to be a mom. And so teaching just kind of felt like it would be great to be able to, you know, be off with him on the holidays and support him after school and all of that. So yeah, that was my decision.
Yep, sure. Thank you for being so authentic about it and also being so transparent. What's made you stay in this field then? Like, so you have, like I mentioned in the intro, taught for over a decade, and now you're still working with kids and those who are homeschooled. What's made you stay?
I think for sure, I don't think I would still be in education if it weren't for the different paths available for teachers. Like if I still had to be in the classroom, if there was not another avenue for me to work in education, I think I would have left a long time ago. So I think that the fact that it's growing, education is evolving, and not just for students, but also for teachers, and giving us more flexibility has allowed me to stay.
Yeah. Can I know a bit more about the kind of transition into the homeschooling part? So, if I remember correctly, you were like just a regular classroom teacher before that, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I was in the classroom for about 6 years.
Yeah.
And it really took me a while to become a teacher. I remember going through that credential program and just feeling really disappointed with where public schools were, the state of things. And so I ended up taking a break for a few years. And then, you know, just again, knowing, okay, I really need to think about, you know, the other side of life, right? Practical things. I can't just, seems like I need to go back and just finish my credential. And then, you know, because in the credential program, you learn about all these other schools. Like I remember hearing about this amazing school in like Eastern United States where kids got to just come, you know, and do whatever they wanted. And there were conscious adults present who were helping them, you know, so they got to explore a lot. And so I think that had a lot to do with just feeling disappointed with the regular traditional model that I was used to. So long story short, COVID came around and
Mm.
we got sent home and had to
Yeah.
teach from home.
Yep.
And I just knew that I couldn't go back. It was
Mm.
very stressful for me. I was teaching middle school kids, and
Yep.
behavior was super challenging, and
Mm. Mm.
my nervous system couldn't handle it. So
Mm. Mm. Mm.
I needed to look for other paths, and
Yep.
thank goodness that they existed. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Like for those of us in the UK and actually even in Hong Kong, like homeschooling is still not really that big of a deal. Like not I think that's the wrong wording. So it's not that big in terms of not many people do it. So do you want to maybe paint us a picture of what it's like kind of working with students who are being homeschooled?
Yeah, definitely. So the school that I work with provides a more structured model for
Mm.
homeschooling. And there is that level of accountability. Parents and students aren't just off on their own. They do
Mm.
have to check in and with their teacher. And so that's kind of the
Yep.
role that I play.
Mm.
I help families choose curriculum. Um, they have funds. They get funds through the state for that curriculum, and then they can also purchase, use it towards extracurricular activities, whether it's
Mm. Mm.
piano lessons or sports, whatever it
Mm.
might be. And so then they have to follow that curriculum, and the curriculum is still standards based. Um,
Mm.
California standards.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
And they have to check in with me and submit work samples.
Yep.
Um, there's still, testing that's involved. We're still considered a public school.
Yep.
Um, and so there's structure and there is accountability.
Mm.
Um, and that's how our model works. And then
Yep.
of course there's families um, who do choose to go off on their own, and they
Mm.
homeschool on their own, and they don't get funding right from the
Mm.
state, because so they're financing all of that on their own, but they don't have to jump through as many hoops as if they would working
Mm.
with even like our charter school like us. So yeah, there's different
Yeah,
levels.
sure, sure. Which students tend to be the ones who go through this process of being homeschooled then, or you get quite a mixed bag of lots of different types of students?
Yeah, exactly. That was the surprising thing for me is I thought when I first started teaching
Mm.
here, I thought in this model, I thought I would have one particular type of student who was
Mm.
real,
Mm.
who, one particular type of parent. But
Mm.
the truth is that it's just like anywhere else. It is a mixed bag. You
Mm.
have
Mm.
families who are students who are really accelerated, and
Mm.
they just need to work beyond grade level, and they're already taking maybe um, community college courses even at like the
Mm.
middle school level, early high
Mm.
school level. So some just want to finish school really early.
Right.
um, and then you have other students who really struggle with school, who
Mm.
just the traditional model and having to sit and move around classroom to classroom, and all of the extra stimulus that
Mm.
30 extra students in a classroom can give, that's troublesome for them.
Yep.
That's a
Yep.
distraction. So it's really truly is a mixed bag. And then with parents too, you have some parents who are super present and
Mm.
want to take on that teaching and deliver that instruction, and then other parents who still work and who really need curriculum and programs that are kind of self
Mm.
sustaining and can take over much of that role.
Mm.
So
Mm.
it truly is a mixed bag, like you said.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So just like a day school, you get a mixed bag of students, mixed bag of parents as well.
Yes.
So you did mention COVID earlier. I'm just curious, like within the States, it been that because of COVID, there's been a lot more students who are going through the homeschooling process?
Yes, I think so too. I think that's shifted for a lot of people as
Mm.
well. Their beliefs and their expectations. I think a lot of parents, once you know, um, students stayed home for so long.
Mm. Mm.
Many times it was over a year, I think, that they were
Mm.
home. And for many parents, that they realized, you know what, I like having my kids home. I
Yep.
want them home. I want to take this over, and so they wanted to start homeschooling. And then
Mm.
also there were some families who are just scared to go back to public school, whether it's, health concerns or, beliefs, whatever it might be. So I do think that, yeah, COVID did kind of shift that conversation for a lot of families and helped
Yeah.
them realize what was possible.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So yeah, thank you for kind of painting a picture of kind of who you are and what homeschooling is all about.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next part of the podcast where we can take a deep dive into a topic of your choice. Because you're both a teacher and also a life coach, I think you can choose something from education, from life coaching, or something that maybe overlaps both.
Oh, wow. Oh, gosh.
Spot for
Um,
choice, right?
yeah, exactly. So let's see. Gosh, this is a hard one. I think, my heart is always wanting to talk about ways that we can make education a freer space
Mm,
um, for students and for families. And so
yep,
I think that's kind of what maybe I'd like to talk about.
yep.
Um, yeah,
Yeah, sure, sure. So, obviously, because we're coming from different education systems, so as I've told you before, I grew up in England, through the UK system, but then I taught in Hong Kong. And so there's a massive contrast in the two systems. And so when we throw in the US as well, I think there's lots to talk about there. So when you talk about making it a freer space, like what do you mean by that, do you think?
yeah. So it's a great question, and I think I'm still figuring that out for
Mm,
myself, to be completely honest. I remember early on when I was in the credential program, and kind of exposed to um, a school model that really piqued my interest. I just thought it
mm,
was amazing. It's called the Sudbury Valley School, and it's
mm.
in I think it's in Massachusetts, if I remember. But just what I was sharing with you about
Yep.
how students, come to school and they really aren't pushed to to um, to learn anything
Mm,
specific. They kind of get to explore and
mm,
then choose whatever interests them.
mm,
And
mm, mm, mm.
so that motto really kind of stuck with me. And I
Yep.
always wonder, why can't this be for everybody?
Yep.
Why can't this be for everybody? And so I think um, I think kind of that's always been my quest
Mm,
and desire, is how can we make school more uh, free, in a sense
mm,
where
mm,
there's more choice involved.
mm.
What is it that why do we have to have all of these rules, and who's deciding what kids should be learning,
Yeah.
and all of that? So I don't know if I strayed from your original question.
No, no,
You might.
no. I was just thinking, just from what you said, would you say a
Yeah,
big culprit would be standardized testing?
absolutely. I
Mm.
do think it is. Yeah, it gets in the way of learning. It really does. Yeah,
Which is
because
such a
there's
shame,
so
isn't
many.
it? Right? Because given that the obviously the purpose is just to make sure there's some standards for people to benchmark students against, but then it seems to have just it's a kind of opposite effect when teachers are teaching to the test, right?
Right. And then why is that a standard for every student?
Mm,
Why not every student is the same and has the same skills and
mm,
talents and interests. And so just because maybe they, are terrible at math or
mm,
don't
mm,
necessarily have that interest for math, there's some hidden genius there. And so why
mm,
aren't we giving them that space to explore and figure out what is it that you uniquely are excellent at? What
mm,
gifts are you bringing to this world? And why we need to create an environment that draws that out versus putting, this standard over everybody and saying, meet this standard. It just
yeah.
um yeah, and it's hard for teachers too, because you have that pull of, this is, these are the requirements that, you are expected to fulfill as a teacher to get your
Mm,
students to reach these standards, and this is what you
mm,
have to teach. Um, But then, when you're in the classroom, you see that the struggle that certain students have, and then you still have to kind of figure out, how can I reach this student? So I think it's so challenging. And I have so much admiration for those teachers who've been in the game for so long and who prioritize connection with students and relationship with students versus whatever, is coming from the top down. Because I feel like here in the States, that's changing all the time. There's always like some new initiative or some new program, or, let's try this, maybe this will help. And it's, I think over time you realize actually what really helps is just connection and and trust, right? Allowing people to choose for themselves. So
yeah. Well, I guess you've touched such a good point there on trust. Perhaps
yeah,
it's going back to our original topic of standardized testing. Maybe it's just the lack of trust from the top, right? That not trusting teachers in terms of them being able to teach the students well up to a certain
right.
standard, and not trusting schools, right, to take care of their own education, or to
Right.
make sure that things are happening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And and then also just like that, maybe what else is, what other agenda is there, and I guess we can go all the way back to history where they talk about how schools were um, designed to produce workers, right? So I think we still live in that culture a little bit, that that assembly line kind of
Yeah.
mentality with schools, and it's unfortunate. Yeah.
Mm,
But I think we're breaking out of it too. And I think COVID has helped that
mm.
shift, is people are aware that there's other ways to do school.
Yeah.
So I think that's the blessing in all of it.
Yeah, yeah. I think the bigger question is to really ask, like, what's the purpose of education, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
if I
Yeah.
just share a little bit about, like, in Hong Kong, so the
Yeah.
situation in Hong Kong is where the purpose is almost to get students into university. So
Hmm.
it's like a standard, like if you get to university, that's what success is. And if you fail to get into university, you're almost labeled as a failure. So
Right.
it's quite an extreme situation, if I'm honest, like in Hong Kong, where it's pretty much university or nothing. Is it similar in the US where everything is geared towards going to college?
I would say yes, the system is designed to move students, from high school into college.
Mm,
Um, is the pressure the same as in Hong Kong? I think it's dissipating. I
mm,
think people are starting to bring back more, trade schools, realizing
mm,
that
mm,
we're losing a piece of culture by insisting that students just go into, a four-year
mm,
university and just go down that path. We're losing
mm.
potential. We're not thinking about creating enough avenues for other students. So um, like when you think about those people who are so good with their hands,
Yeah.
people
Mm,
who, like, what are we going to do if we don't have a society where we have plumbers, right?
mm,
Someone who's
mm,
actually really interested in fixing things and
mm,
solving problems, like not just theoretically, but right there in person
mm,
in real life. And so, um, you know, and then artists, right? People who
mm.
are just amazing um, artists and visionaries, and create this beautiful work. And what about a space for them? Because the university, that it's very theoretical if you think about university, right? Like if I think about
Mm,
education, my education was in the classroom. That's where I
mm,
learned a
mm,
lot
mm.
about how to implement um, teaching and practices. It was not a lot in the actual setting
Yeah,
of the university. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah, to answer your question, I think the pressure is probably less here in the US.
Mm,
Um, However, we don't have those systems yet to meet those other students. If you don't
yeah.
go to university, it's basically a job, or maybe what else, is there a trade school that you're interested in,
Mm,
something.
mm, mm, mm.
um yeah.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean, COVID has given us a great opportunity to rethink about education.
Yeah.
And like you said, things like trade schools are brilliant. Are there other things on your mind which you think, oh, that would really help push it forward for like the whole system in terms of like what you said earlier, helping the students just find the right path for themselves?
Yeah, I think I mean I would love to see more teachers talk about other options. I would love
Mm,
for, I would love for schools to start to um talk about other options besides four-year colleges, because that is
mm,
such a push, because it is, I think the system is designed for that. But I think if we can really start, having people on the ground speak up and say
mm,
this is not the
mm,
only way, and get
mm,
involved in maybe creating other pathways, and just shedding light, talking to students and shedding light on, there's more to life than just
mm.
college.
Yeah,
um
yeah, yeah. And that's so true. Like as soon as you said that, I'm just thinking like sometimes it's when you think about it, like you go to college or university, you get into lots of debt, right? And then you
yes.
graduate with a degree, and then you're loaded with so much debt that like it takes years to pay off. And sometimes I'm just thinking, I mean, of course, I went through the system too, right, myself. But then
Yeah.
are people just too scared to take the alternative path because they don't know what's there? So they would rather take on all this debt. They would rather just go through what everyone else is going through just to secure a degree.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sure. So, the age-old problem of just doing what's familiar, what
Mm,
everybody else has done, and just continuing along that route, because the unknown is scarier.
yeah, yeah,
Um, you know, it can be a lot scarier to try and carve out your own path, for sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like you said, more teachers talking about the alternative options. Anything else on your mind that you think that would really help people to think about this alternative path or alternative paths?
Not that I can, pinpoint. I mean, I think it's shifting, and I think that social media is helping that a lot. I think there's lots of
Mm,
people who are sharing their stories on social media, whether it's, they're choosing to go the route of homeschooling through a
mm,
charter school, or, there's a big movement now with unschooling, where
mm, mm, mm,
there's no kind of agenda. It's just, I follow the lead of my child
mm,
versus the other way around. Um, and so I think more people kind of sharing their stories
mm.
about possibilities outside of the traditional model
Yep.
is really helpful.
Mm, mm,
I don't know if we're going to be able to change the system,
mm,
the typical system. I think that might always just be that, but we're going to
mm.
have to find other avenues
Yeah, yeah.
for ourselves and our kids.
No, absolutely. Because I think when we see good examples or successful examples of people
Yeah.
doing something else, I think it really gives us a bit more confidence that, okay, maybe it's worth trying, or at least it's not as scary as I thought, right? I
Right.
just had one more question about this, like, because you've been in both regular school and homeschooling. Are
Yeah.
there any things from homeschooling that you think can be actually done within the school system? Because clearly, like you said, we aren't going to change the system overnight, right? But
Yeah.
maybe the regular school system, there's things that can be shifted within that
Yeah.
maybe we can take from homeschooling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the first things that come to mind that I think would be so great is if we gave students more flexibility in their schedule.
Mm,
Like, even because, with students who homeschool, they can sleep in as long as they want, as long as they get the work done. It really doesn't
yeah.
matter.
Yeah. I
So,
have a quick question. Sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you. I would
yeah,
like to
no,
ask a quick question here. What time does or what time do students generally go to school, like in California? Like, what's the
yeah,
starting time?
yeah. So for young students, it's 8 a.m. class starts,
Yep.
and then just I think a year or two ago, high schools in California changed their start time. It used to be 8 a.m. and so now it's
Yep.
8:30. So they
Oh,
gave kids
okay.
an extra 30 minutes. So
Okay. Okay. Because I was
yeah.
talking to another teacher in the US. I can't remember where she's from, but then she started school at 7.
Oh, that's so early. Was that the students or the teacher?
I think both.
Oh, that's very early. Yeah.
7-ish, right? And I was so surprised. I was like, is this happening everywhere in the States? Because in Hong Kong, it's
Yeah.
about 8-ish, like it could be
Yeah.
7:50. In the UK, it's normally like 8:30, possibly 9, depending on which school it is. So I was shocked when I heard that. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
glad you told me that, okay, there are some schools where it's 8, maybe 8:30 even
Yeah.
for high school students. So yeah, sorry,
Like
getting back to what you said,
that's
flexibility in
okay. I
schedule.
mean, seven, like giving some students the option, because there are some people who are early risers, right?
Yeah.
And 7
Mm,
a.m. would be a great time to have a class.
mm, mm,
So I think just that could be
mm,
tweaked and could be so helpful.
mm,
Um, so yeah, and then okay, just to throw out a few more ideas,
mm,
since I can,
mm.
aside from just allowing more flexibility in the schedule, I think that students need they need free time in
Mm,
school. They
mm,
need like blocked off time where there's no class, there's no learning. It's just like time to do work, you know, um,
mm,
with the help of teachers, tutors, because the other problem that you run into here with is that it has to do with equity. Once you send a
mm,
student home, they all have different home environments, and so expecting
mm, mm, mm.
homework to get done for one kid who's got issues at home and no parents to help versus
Yeah.
another who's got all the tutors in the world,
Mm,
that's an equity problem. And I think help giving students the opportunity to bridge that gap in school would be super helpful.
mm.
Um, yeah, I'm one of those who thinks homework should be tossed out the window anyway. I mean, you're in school for six
Yep.
hours a day. If you can't get it
Yeah.
done there, then come on. No one wants to take their work home, right? No adult wants to work from
Very
after
true.
hours. So
Uh,
it's silly.
in Hong Kong, we like apart from homework, we also have holiday homework. I don't know if you have that in the States. So basically, it was a bit of a shock to me. So basically, we as teachers, we were asked to set homework during long holidays, like Christmas holidays, Chinese New Year holidays, Easter holidays, and even the summer holidays. So you have to set like lots of homework during the summer holidays to occupy the students because parents will be
Yeah.
worried when their children are not doing schoolwork. So I don't know if that's quite extreme.
Yeah, I think here it just depends on the teacher. Some
Mm, mm,
teachers
mm.
might and some might not, but there's no like general push for
Yeah, yeah.
um for that. Yeah.
But yeah, that's great. Thank you for all your great points about making the school system just a freer place, right? Were there any things that we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about too, regarding
No,
like how to make it a freer space?
no, I feel like no, I felt like I kind of shared what my thoughts were on that.
Mm, mm, mm,
I
mm.
just really appreciate you giving me the space to come on and talk a little bit about what I do,
Yeah,
um, and my journey overall. And
yeah.
so thank you again for having me.
Before we leave though, I have some quick fire questions for you too. Are you
Okay,
ready for them?
okay. I am. Okay.
So how would your students describe you?
Oh, how would they describe me? I think they would say I'm kind.
That's always nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite go-to activity when you're teaching?
When I'm teaching, so I really like to when I am teaching, and I don't do that as often these days. It's
Mm,
usually the parents who are doing that, but I do
mm,
like to
mm.
throw in like a Kahoot game.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yep, Kahoot, yep, yep.
Yeah. So I like to use the technology as much as I can because
Mm,
the youngsters are so adept with all of
mm-hmm.
that. So
Yep, yep.
uh,
That's great. Do you have any funny, strange, scary, touching moments that's happened in your classroom or just in when you're talking to parents about what's happened at home?
hmm, um, I have a family who I work with now that I who this model has just been such a blessing for them. Their daughter
Mm,
has severe medical issues,
yeah.
and so just knowing that she gets to be at home and
Mm,
still where her needs are met and still
mm,
pursue, her academics.
mm,
I feel really blessed that that's possible for her.
mm,
Um, And then, I love the relationship that I get to form with families, which
Yeah.
I didn't get to do that as a teacher in the classroom,
Mm,
not
mm,
you see students, but you don't see parents that often. And so for
mm.
me, it's been really, really comforting to see the whole family and to
Yeah. Yeah.
form those connections. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's such a profound point because I always feel that when we're teaching students, we have to see kind of what's behind them, like the whole family, their family
Hmm.
situation, right? So we're not teaching necessarily the student, but we're teaching the human there, right?
Yes.
Who
Yes.
brings different problems, issues from home. So I think that's a really, really good point there. So thank you for that. What's one
Yeah.
question you have for me? Because I've been firing you so many questions
Yeah.
so far. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me what is your desire for this podcast? What is your
Mm.
like heartfelt desire with this podcast?
Oh, I've been asked this a few times before, and basically I say a similar thing, which is really to help teachers learn from other people's stories. Because, like, I
Mm,
mean, you've shared lots of little stories within this episode today already, and I just feel that sometimes when you are an early career teacher, starting your
yes.
teaching journey, it's so tough. Pretty much like what you
Yeah.
said too, right? It's so tough. It's so emotional, so stressful that you just want someone to talk to, or you want to hear that someone else is actually going through the same struggles as you, or that
Mm,
there's light at the end of the tunnel. So
hmm.
my biggest hope is that this podcast can help someone like that, and to not lose so many teachers, if I'm honest, because
Mm,
so many teachers just drop out
hmm.
after a year, after 2 years, and if they can be more encouraged by this podcast, um, connect with other teachers who have similar problems or issues, that would be wonderful. Yeah.
I love that, Alan. I love that so much. I think this is going to be a blessing to those teachers who are
Mm,
searching to hear from other voices.
yeah.
And you're right. There is that gap there. You do feel alone when you're first starting out.
Yeah.
So I
And
love that.
just to add one more point as you were
Yeah.
talking, because I just remembered that you are all the way in the United States right now. I'm based in the UK, and it's just
Yeah.
wonderful. Like just being able to connect with people from all around the world, and
Mm.
so I think that's something that's really really nice thing that I can do with the podcast. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Right. That global.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely.
which I love so much about our life coaching school because it brought us together from all over the
Yeah.
world. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
My last question for you is simply similar to what we've just said, meant just now. But imagine you're talking to the fresh graduate you, kind of when you first started your own career in education. What advice
Mm.
would you have for yourself now, given that you've had all this experience since then?
Yeah, I would tell myself that it gets better. You'll find your way. You're not alone. And don't lose sight of your values and what's important to you.
Mm,
Life will
mm,
mold around that. You don't need to
yeah,
conform. You can trust that life will form around what's important to you.
yeah, yeah. And that's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah. So I'd like to thank you for coming onto the podcast. I will say that you are definitely not someone who conforms because you are breaking free from the traditional method and making education a freer space for those students and families that you work with. So yeah, I just really want to thank you for sharing all your ideas today on the podcast. Yeah, it's been really, really nice chatting to you.
Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you again for your time. I appreciate it. It was really great to get all of that out and to have that conversation with you. So thank you again.
Wow, that was such a stimulating conversation with Anna, and I've got so many different questions on my mind now in terms of how to make education a freer space. So, what are the alternatives to the traditional route? How can we get teachers to talk about these alternatives? How can we get parents and students to be brave enough to take the path less traveled on? And how can we offer more flexibility and autonomy in the current education system? I hope you enjoyed listening to Anna's extraordinary story, and please do join us again next time on Ordinary Teachers and Students.